Friends, artificial intelligence has been finding traction in our lives like never before. Everyone around us has been talking about artificial intelligence as though it will redefine the way we conduct ourselves in future. What is the truth? Will we lead a more contented life or will we be more unhappy? Let's find some answers to some of these questions. But before understanding artificial intelligence, we need to know what intelligence is and more specifically what human intelligence is. We begin creating intelligence and end up organizing it, controlling it, directing it, and transforming it. Because we have feelings, we have sensations, and we have emotions. We are in constant interaction with our cognitive system that defines ideas like dreams, loss of interest, distress, and even pleasure. How do we do all this? Our cognitive abilities are reasoning, complex idea, comprehension, and learning from experience. And they all help us in our perception and builds our intelligence. We have five senses, right? Our five senses, such as ability to see, taste, touch, smell, and hear, help us in accumulating data required to build our cognitive abilities. Now we have some additional senses too. Ever realized how we understand where our body is in space or touch the finger to the tip of the nose even with eyes closed? Or climb steps without actually looking at them? How do we do it? This is proprioception, which tells us our movement and position of our limbs and muscles. Why do you feel the pressure when someone presses down the skin? This is mechanosensation. And even the movement to control balance and tilt of head is also sensed. How do we know stretching in muscles and tendons or keep track of our limbs? The relative positions and so on. Kinesthetic receptors help us do it. There are even receptors to detect levels of oxygen in certain arteries in our bloodstream, which maintains the temperature of our body. Stephen Hawking, an English theoretical physicist, once said, "Science facts can be much more astounding than science fiction." What we thought was in the realm of fantasy earlier is actually in the domain of facts today. Artificial intelligence and robotics are two such realities today, which were in the realm of fantasy a few decades back. Now we have people, or we hear people talk routinely about everything today as powered by artificial intelligence. Like I said before, how much of it is real and how much of it is actually fiction? Every being, and not just humans, even animals, which have a nervous system, will have some form of intelligence. Obviously, human intelligence is the best, is much more superior than anyone else. And that includes artificial intelligence as well. David Weschler, one of the most renowned psychologists who pioneered the field of cognitive psychology, had once said, "Intelligence is the aggregate, the sum of global capacity of the individual to act purposefully, to think rationally, and to deal effectively with the environment. Very profound. Now let's look at an interesting fact. Have you ever seen people perceiving senses differently? Some people can see sounds as colors or associate certain sights with smells. This is called synesthesia. We also do it sometimes. Human perception intelligence is built continually over a human being's lifetime. And given that some senses are well developed and some not so well developed or may have been subjected to injury, the data inputs vary from being to being, from human being to human being, which means the intelligence perception will also vary from being to being. If that is the case, how do we measure intelligence? If we compare the mental age to the chronological age, the result is intelligence quotient, and a measure of intelligence that is adjusted to the age. Obviously, if one behaves as a 6-year-old when he actually is 30 years old, be sure people will ridicule. Maybe there is a problem with the level of intelligence that you should actually have at 30 years of age. So if the sense receptors are providing the data, how does our brain analyze and tell the body what to do in response? The brain works like a big computer, though it does much more than even the biggest computers can do. That's the beauty of the human brain. Brain tissue, all this is made possible due to certain facts. Brain tissue, neurons, nerve cells, synapses, and so on. Now the brain tissue is made up of about 100 billion nerve cells or neurons and 1 trillion supporting cells which stabilize the tissue. Now neurons are the information messengers. They use electrical impulses and chemical signals to transmit this information between different areas of the brain and between the brain and rest of the nervous system. The functional basis of any biological nervous system is a reflex or a simple path along which a nerve impulse travels from one neuron to another neuron. Remember the word path. This is very important, since this is the most important difference between biological intelligence and the artificial intelligence that we want to create. Our thoughts are not special signals. We think of several things, we imagine things. Certainly we find that we are flying somewhere, and landing on the moon, things like that. So our thoughts are not special signals, but special pathways along which nerve impulses travel. Hence, a chain of neurons is a reflex. Our neuron or our nerve system has 2 distinct facts. One is an active network involved in the direct control of real actions. And the other is a passive network, which creates and uses chains of neurons, but does not really control any physical action. What do they do then? Even as these neurons do not participate in any real actions, they act as training sites, training grounds for real actions and help us learn new reflexes. The nervous system controls our individual reflexes, and a host of complex reactions that form our behavioral strategies. Now, all these reactions, in order that they happen, will need energy for performance. In a way, artificial intelligence mimics the human nervous system. A fairly accurate resting mobile rate, RMR, this is a test that indicates that for any mental activity that includes sleep, anything where you use your mental faculties, including at the time of sleep, we need about 12 to 20 watts, and for the whole body to work, about 60 to 100 watts. When we are running, when we are exercising and so on, it never goes beyond 100 watts. Most of the time 10 to 20 watts. 50% of the glucose is the source of energy in the human body. So 50% of that glucose produced by the liver and entering the bloodstream is used by the brain neurons. 50% of that. But neurons make up only 2% of the total body weight. So in fact, our brain, even at a minimum activity, consumes the maximum energy that our body can allocate for the purpose. As a difference, how does the personal computer work? How does it compare? Let's see, it's very interesting. An average PC, personal computer, in a sleep mode consumes about 10 to 20 watts. While when running resource-intensive programs, a lot of logic functions or number crunching and so on, its power consumption increases 10 to 20 times, or it goes up to 200 watts. So, if our brain were to increase in a similar way, its requirement of energy, as the processes that use the brain become more and more complex, like a PC does, we will simply die, or at least faint. Nothing happens, neither happens. So how does the human brain optimize the energy levels or the energy that it requires? Again, very interesting. It generates approximately the same number of impulses regardless of the situation and the current task, meaning its energy consumption remains practically constant regardless of what a person is doing. Whether he is resting, whether he is solving problems, whether he is indulging in complex intellectual processes, whatever be the activity of the brain, energy consumption is constant. Now this is simply amazing. Actually, our brain is a very complex art form for the way it is arranged. The path along which a nerve impulse travels depends on how exactly the docking nodes, which are called synapses, which connect the nerve cells to the neurons, are triggered. How those docking nodes are triggered. These junction points, they are called synapses, and they have tiny transmembrane proteins, ionotropic receptors or ion channels that allow ions to move. Which ions to move? Sodium and potassium, to pass through the biological membranes and thereby generate a nerve impulse. A biological nervous system, or how we perceive, is not a computational function like that happens in a personal computer, but it's a reflex that I talked about. So the insights into the reflex mechanism is extremely important, And that will give us an understanding of what artificial intelligence is all about. Friends, I hope you have now realized the complexity of the human brain and are aware of our various abilities. It indeed is a great boon that we are born as human beings, the highest form of life and the highest intelligence levels that one can have. Are we making a mistake then in assuming that we can actually create a replica of ourselves, of human beings? Whatever that is, we sure are making some great inroads into understanding the creation of the Almighty. Next week, I will take you through artificial intelligence now that we know a little bit of what human intelligence is. Until then, Dhanyavad, Namaskar and thank you.